Amali stood in her bedroom gazing into the ornate mirror as sunlight streamed through the lace curtains, catching the delicate beating of her wedding dress. She radiated happiness, blissfully unaware of the dark truth waiting to unravel her world. This day, meant to be the pinnacle of joy, was merely the opening act in a story that would shake the foundations of the close-knit African Muslim community in Johannesburg, sparking a criminal investigation and exposing a web of lies stretching across continents. As she adjusted her veil, the excitement in her heart was momentarily disrupted by a shadow of unease, a fleeting sense of something amiss that she could not quite identify. Brushing it off as nothing more than the nervous energy of a bride-to-be, she turned to her mother Nomsa, who was diligently perfecting the final details of the day's grand event. The Mthembu family had long been a cornerstone of Johannesburg's Muslim community. Saifo, Amali's father, was a prominent real estate developer who had built more than homes. He had built trust and respect. And his wife Nomsa was equally revered, her quiet grace a model for the women in the community. Together, they had cultivated a reputation for generosity, wisdom, and unshakable faith. Their youngest daughter, Amali, a University of Cape Town-trained pediatrician at 28, was beautiful and devout, with a heart as big as her ambitions in Johannesburg. Amali was a name spoken with admiration. Parents held her up as an example to their daughters, and young men envied the future groom who would win her hand. To her parents, her achievements were a reflection of their sacrifices, and Sifo often said that nothing would bring him greater joy than to see Amali married to a man of equal faith and stature. It seemed as though God himself had answered that prayer when Imam Kabelo Ndlovu arrived in Johannesburg. Kabelo Ndlovu was everything the community needed and more. At 35, he commanded both respect and affection, his sermons resonating with wisdom beyond his years. His education at the University of Nairobi and humanitarian work in Mozambique and Europe, painting a picture of a man devoted to both faith and service. He was tall with rich brown skin and piercing hazel eyes that seemed to hold secrets of the universe. His presence was magnetic. Even those who had never exchanged a word with him felt his impact. For many in the congregation, Kabelo was not just a spiritual leader, but a symbol of hope and renewal. Amal first met Kabelo during an iftar at the mosque. She had been helping serve food when his gaze fell upon her. Their first exchange was brief, polite, and unremarkable to an outsider, but something unspoken passed between them. Kabelo was captivated by her modesty and quiet strength, while Amali felt an undeniable pull toward his wisdom and charisma. It was not long before Kabelo approached Saifo, expressing his interest in pursuing a courtship with Amali. Sifo and Nomsa, cautious but hopeful, agreed. The courtship, bound by the traditions of their faith, unfolded under the watchful eyes of family and community as they spoke often, always in the presence of others, sharing their dreams and values. Kabelo's eloquence and vision for their future resonated deeply with Amali. To her, he represented everything she had been taught to value in a husband: a strong faith, a sharp intellect, and an unwavering commitment to others. For Kabelo, Amali's blend of ambition and humility was a rare and precious combination. Within 6 months, the engagement was announced. The Mthembu family spared no effort in planning the wedding, which quickly became the talk of Johannesburg's African Muslim community. Invitation cards were printed on fine gold-trimmed paper. The venue, a grand hall adorned with chandeliers and velvet drapes, was booked months in advance, and the menu featured dishes from every corner of Africa, a testament to the family's heritage and hospitality. For Saifo, this wedding was not just a celebration of his daughter's happiness, but a reaffirmation of his family's place in the community. The excitement was palpable as the day drew closer. Women exchanged whispers about Amali's dress, a custom creation flown in from Lagos, while men discussed Kabelo's impeccable character and how fortunate Amali was to have found such a husband. The match was deemed perfect, a union of beauty and wisdom, tradition and modernity. Yet beneath the surface, unnoticed by the cheerful crowd, subtle tensions simmered. Amali, despite her outward composure, could not shake a growing unease. Kabelo, for all his charm and devotion, had moments where his words felt rehearsed, his stories too polished. There were questions she dared not ask for fear of seeming ungrateful or doubting God's plan. Instead, she buried her uncertainties, reassuring herself that these were simply the anxieties of stepping into a new chapter of life. As Amali turned away from the mirror to join her family downstairs, the house buzzed with preparations. Her father greeted guests with his trademark warmth, while her mother supervised the catering. Cabello, already at the mosque, awaited her arrival. The ceremony promised to be a moment of joy, the culmination of months of anticipation. But life has a way of revealing its truths at the most unexpected times. As Amali stepped into the car that would take her to the mosque, a weight settled on her chest. She glanced out the window, watching the familiar streets of Johannesburg blur past, unaware that her world was about to change forever. Hundreds of guests indulged in an array of African delicacies, swayed to the vibrant melodies of the djembe and kalimba, and showered the newlyweds with heartfelt well wishes. Cabello captivated the crowd with his clever remarks and affectionate looks toward his bride, Amali. Yet as the evening progressed, subtle changes in his demeanor began to surface. He frequently glanced at his watch and seemed unusually preoccupied during conversations. In the joyous whirlwind of celebration, these small details slipped by unnoticed. It was not until after midnight that Amali and Cabello finally retired to their honeymoon suite. The hotel staff had gone all out, adorning the room with fragrant rose petals and flickering candles to create an ambiance of romance. Amali felt a mix of anticipation and shyness, but Cabello appeared distant. He paced the room and checked his phone incessantly, his restlessness growing when Amali suggested they start preparing for bed. Cabello muttered an excuse about needing to use the bathroom first. As she waited, Amali's heart raced. Raised in a traditional household, she had never been intimate with a man before, and the moment felt overwhelming. Minutes dragged on, and her initial nervousness turned into concern. Could Cabello be unwell? When she knocked gently on the bathroom door, her voice was soft but steady. "Cabello, is everything okay?" The silence on the other side sent a chill through her. With trembling fingers, she tried the doorknob and found it unlocked. What awaited her inside would forever be etched into her memory. Cabello stood there, a towel draped around his waist, his chest exposed. But it was not his state of undress that left her frozen in shock. It was what was not there beneath the towel, where there should have been a sign of his masculinity. There was nothing, absolutely nothing. His face, pale with fear and shame, told her everything before his lips even moved. "Amali," he began in a shaky voice, "I can explain, but—" Amali could not hear him. Her mind reeled, grappling with what her eyes had just seen, or rather, what they had not seen. Questions flooded her thoughts, each more unsettling than the last. "Well, what is this?" she finally managed to whisper, her voice cracking. The room seemed to spin around her as Cabello sank to the floor, his voice breaking as he spoke. "I'm sorry," he said, tears streaming down his face. "I never meant for it to go this far. I was born this way, a rare condition I've hidden my entire life." Amali felt as though the world had collapsed beneath her feet. Her voice quivered with anger as she demanded answers. "Why would you marry me? Why didn't you tell me or my family?" Her questions came fast, each one cutting deeper than the last. Cabello's responses were disjointed, punctuated by sobs. He spoke of a life spent hiding the burden of shame and the societal expectations that had driven him to create a facade. He admitted that he had hoped for a union built on faith and understanding, one that could transcend the physical. But for Amali, this was not just about biology, it was about deceit. His actions in her eyes were a fundamental betrayal of trust and an affront to the honesty she valued above all else. As Cabello continued to plead for her forgiveness, Amali's initial shock hardened into resolve. In a voice steadier than she expected, she said, "I want a divorce now." Cabello begged her to reconsider, but her mind was made up. At dawn, still wearing her wedding dress, Amali sat in her father's study explaining through tears why her marriage of less than a day had come to an abrupt end. Sifo and Nomsa listened in stunned silence, their hearts breaking for their daughter. The news of Amali and Cabello's sudden separation spread rapidly through Johannesburg's tight-knit Muslim community. Speculation ran wild. Some whispered that Cabello had a secret wife, while others guessed financial troubles or hidden addictions. The Mthembu family, mortified and bewildered, initially tried to keep the real story under wraps, citing irreconcilable differences. But in a community where secrets rarely stayed buried, the truth eventually emerged. And when it did, the fallout was explosive. Reactions were sharply divided. Some expressed compassion for Cabello, seeing him as a victim of societal pressures and his own insecurities, while others condemned his actions, viewing them as a betrayal not only of Amali, but of the trust of the entire community. As the whispers grew louder, Cabello disappeared from Johannesburg, leaving behind a community grappling with the weight of his choices. His disappearance came as a thunderclap. A hastily scribbled apology left behind in his hotel room provided no real answers, only deepening the confusion and suspicion surrounding him. The community, already shaken by his sudden exit, began to ask the questions they had perhaps ignored for too long. Who was Cabello Ndlovu really, and how had he managed to ascend to a position of such trust and reverence without anyone suspecting his secrets? In the days that followed, whispers spread like wildfire through Johannesburg's close-knit Muslim community. Some speculated that Cabello had left to avoid personal shame, while others feared something darker might be at play. What began as hushed conversations among families soon escalated into a collective reckoning. The once admired imam who had charmed so many was now the source of unease and betrayal. Local authorities could not ignore the growing turmoil. The Johannesburg Police Service assigned Detective Thandiwe Makazi, known for her sharp instincts and determination, to investigate. What initially appeared to be a private family scandal began to take on the contours of something far more complex. Cabello's sudden vanishing act, paired with his ambiguous past, suggested a man hiding more than just personal failings. Detective Mkazi began her inquiry by verifying Cabello's credentials. It did not take long for discrepancies to surface. Despite his claims of having studied at the prestigious University of Ibadan, no records of a student named Cabello Ndlovu existed. His humanitarian work in war-torn regions, which he often spoke of with such passion, could not be corroborated. More disturbingly, the national identification number he had used to secure his position at the mosque turned out to be fraudulent. As Detective Mkazi pieced together the fragments of Cabello's life, a different picture began to emerge, one of deception and manipulation. Conversations with mosque members revealed that Cabello had always been skillful at dodging questions about his past, using charm and religious platitudes to deflect suspicion. His arrival in Johannesburg had been accompanied by glowing recommendations, but when Detective Mkazi reached out to the mosques that allegedly vouched for him, none could confirm his involvement. Cabello Ndlovu, it seemed, was a man built entirely on fabrications. The investigation soon expanded beyond Johannesburg. Detective Mkazi contacted law enforcement agencies across the country, uncovering a troubling pattern. Cabello, or whoever he truly was, had moved from one Muslim community to another, assuming different roles of authority. As Mkazi pursued the truth, Amali Mthembu found herself caught in the eye of the storm. What had started as a hopeful chapter of her life had spiraled into chaos. Her once bright medical career was now on hold, overshadowed by the scandal. Amal's parents, though unwavering in their support, struggled with their own feelings of betrayal and guilt. They had prided themselves on their wisdom and judgment, yet they too had been deceived. For Amali, the most painful challenge lay within the community. Though many expressed sympathy, there were those whose pity felt insincere, a thin veil for curiosity and gossip. Others openly questioned her decision to seek a divorce, suggesting she should have shown greater understanding or patience. "This isn't about forgiveness," Amali would calmly explain when pressed. "It's about trust. You cannot build a life with someone who begins with a lie." Her conviction did little to quiet the murmurs. Every trip to the mosque or grocery store became an ordeal. Every glance a reminder of her newfound position as the center of public intrigue. Yet Amali refused to let the weight of judgment crush her. If anything, the ordeal hardened her resolve to move forward with dignity. As weeks turned into months, Detective Mkazi's investigation began to uncover even more startling revelations. The man known as Cabello Ndlovu had been living under a string of aliases for over a decade. His ability to charm and manipulate had allowed him to integrate seamlessly into communities across South Africa. But his trail was littered with evidence of financial fraud and betrayal. Amali's story became not just a cautionary tale for her community, but a source of introspection. How had such a person been allowed to gain so much trust? Why had no one questioned his background sooner? The mosque's leaders convened meetings to discuss safeguards for the future, exploring stricter vetting processes for spiritual leaders. Some regarded Amal with sympathy, while others barely hid their prying curiosity. A few even criticized her decision, questioning why she had not shown more compassion toward Cabello's condition, insinuating that her swift move to divorce him was impulsive or contrary to Islamic principles. But Amali stood resolute. "This isn't about his physical condition," she would explain calmly when confronted. "It's about trust. A marriage, a life built together, cannot start with such a profound lie. How can anything stand on such a shaky foundation?" As the weeks turned to months, Detective Thandiwe Mkhize uncovered a tale far more intricate and unsettling than anyone could have foreseen. The man known as Cabello Ndlovu had been using a series of aliases for over 10 years, drifting from one Muslim community to another across South Africa. In each place, the pattern remained the same. He would arrive with polished but counterfeit credentials, earn the trust of the local community, and often ascend to a role of spiritual authority. Sometimes he left voluntarily after a short time, and in other instances, such as in Johannesburg, his facade would crumble, forcing him to vanish without warning. The true extent of Cabello's deception became evident when Detective Mkhize dug deeper in several of the communities where he had resided. He had been given control of charitable funds designated for mosque improvements or outreach initiatives, and in every case, substantial amounts of money disappeared alongside him. This trail of financial crimes shocked everyone, but the revelations did not end there. Through collaboration with international agencies, Detective Mkhize finally uncovered Cabello's real identity. His name was Amir Fakaza, born in Ghana and raised in Nigeria. His early years were marked by minor offenses and a knack for manipulation. At some point, Amir discovered that impersonating a religious leader offered unparalleled opportunities for fraud. His natural charm, combined with his ability to memorize scripture and imitate the demeanor of genuine scholars, allowed him to weave an almost perfect disguise. The most unsettling discovery, however, was revealed through Amir's medical records. They confirmed that he had been born with a rare condition, leaving him without external genitalia. This deeply personal truth, which he had concealed for so long, had been exposed on his wedding night with Amali. Ironically, it was perhaps the only authentic thing about him. As Amir's deceptions unraveled, the Johannesburg Muslim community was forced to confront some uncomfortable questions. How had someone like Amir managed to deceive them so thoroughly? Why had no one scrutinized his background more carefully? In the aftermath, community leaders convened meetings to reflect on the incident and explore ways to safeguard against such betrayals in the future. Proposals for stricter vetting processes for religious leaders and improved systems for verifying credentials were widely discussed. For many, the scandal served as a sobering reminder about the risks of blind faith in authority figures. "We elevated him without question." One elder admitted during a community forum, "Respect for our imams is important, but so is critical thinking. We must never forget that they too are human." For Amale Mthembu, the revelations about Amir Fakaza's identity and his years of deceit stirred a complicated mix of emotions. In one sense, she felt justified in her decision to end the marriage so abruptly. Yet on the other, she was left with a profound sense of betrayal. The person she thought she had married had been nothing more than an illusion. With unwavering support from her family and guidance from a therapist specializing in religious trauma, Amali began the slow process of rebuilding her life. She returned to her medical practice, pouring her energy into her work with renewed determination. The experience, though deeply painful, gave her a perspective that allowed her to connect with patients facing their own crises in life. Her empathy and strength became a source of healing, not just for herself but for those she served. Though the scars of her ordeal would remain, Amal refused to let them define her. Instead, she became a strong voice for increasing transparency and accountability within religious communities. Drawing from her own painful experience as she openly shared her story, urging others to trust their instincts and not shy away from asking difficult questions, even when it meant challenging those in positions of authority. Once Amir Fakaza's true identity was exposed and the scale of his crimes brought to light, the case escalated beyond the local level. The South African Police Service joined the investigation, initiating a nationwide manhunt. Amir's face quickly became familiar across news outlets and social media, making him one of the most sought-after fugitives in the country. Detective Thandiwe Mkhize, now collaborating with SAPS agent Sipho Khumalo, found herself at the helm of a sprawling investigation that reached far beyond Johannesburg. The team painstakingly retraced Amir's steps, interviewing countless people who had been deceived by the charismatic con man over the years. As their inquiries expanded, it became evident that Amir's operations were not confined to South Africa. Evidence of similar schemes emerged from Nigeria, Kenya, and even from countries as far afield as Australia, prompting Interpol to get involved in each location. Amir had tailored his persona to meet local expectations, maintaining the guise of a devout and articulate religious leader. The international scope of his crimes added layers of complexity, with differing laws, jurisdictions, and the logistical challenges of coordinating with multiple agencies, making the pursuit of Amir a monumental task. Back in Johannesburg, the Muslim community grappled with a lingering sense of betrayal. Despite reassurances from law enforcement that Amir had likely fled the area, the unease remained. Security at the mosque was heightened, and guest speakers were now required to undergo thorough background checks. For Amali and her family, the ongoing investigation served as a constant reminder of their ordeal. They found themselves torn between a desire for justice and the need to move on. Sipho, in particular, bore the weight of guilt. As a respected community leader, he blamed himself for allowing Amir into their lives. "I should have been more vigilant," he often lamented, the regret etched in the lines of his face, his words echoing the shared sentiments of a community questioning how they had been so thoroughly deceived. While traditional detective work yielded some insights, the digital realm proved critical to unraveling Amir's web of deceit. SAP's cybercrime specialists uncovered a trail of online activity that shed light on his methods and movements. It was revealed that Amir had relied heavily on the dark web to obtain forged documents and maintain communication with a network of accomplices engaged in fraudulent schemes. This digital footprint not only illuminated Amir's past but also hinted at his potential plans. Analyzing cryptocurrency transactions, investigators identified a pattern suggesting Amir might be preparing to relocate to Southeast Africa. Just as the trail seemed to be fading, the investigation took an unexpected turn thanks to an unlikely source. A young man named Tariq contacted Detective Mkhize, claiming to have information about Amir Fakaza. Tariq, as it turned out, was Amir's estranged son from a brief marriage in his youth. His revelation brought a deeper understanding of Amir's life. Tariq spoke of a turbulent childhood marked by his father's absence and a pervasive fear of exposure. He admitted he had not seen Amir in years, but had followed the manhunt with a conflicted mix of shame and curiosity. "I can't defend what he's done," Tariq confessed to Detective Mkhize, "but I think I understand why he did it." His insights painted a picture of a man whose lies were born not only from greed, but also from a lifetime of insecurity and desperation to hide his true self. Tariq's account provided a personal dimension to the case, one that complicated the narrative of Amir as merely a cunning imposter. The investigation continued to grow, weaving together threads of fraud, identity theft, and deeply human motivations. As Detective Mkhize and Agent Khumalo pieced together the puzzle, they found themselves pursuing not just a fugitive, but also the fractured legacy of a man whose deceit had touched lives across continents. He had spent his entire life running from the person he truly was. With Tariq's insights and the information gathered from Amir's victims, the SAPs pieced together a comprehensive psychological profile of the elusive con artist. Dr. Nia Moyo, a forensic psychologist brought in to consult, described a man plagued by profound insecurities and an insatiable need for admiration and acceptance. Amir Fakaza isn't just evading the law, Dr. Moyo explained during a briefing. He's fleeing from himself. His entire existence has been an intricate charade crafted to conceal what he perceives as his deepest flaw. The religious persona he created isn't merely a facade, it's the ideal version of himself that he longs to embody. This detailed profile proved instrumental in predicting Amir's next moves, helping authorities narrow down potential locations where he might try to rebuild his life and resume his fraudulent schemes. Combining this understanding with digital traces left by Amir online, the International Law Enforcement Coalition began closing in on their target. Suspected sightings were reported in Southeast Africa, including in Tanzania, Kenya, and Mozambique, and every lead was meticulously investigated. As the investigation deepened, Amir's known associates were apprehended in synchronized raids across multiple continents. Each arrest provided additional clues, gradually tightening the net around the elusive fugitive. As the pursuit escalated, Amali wrestled with a storm of emotions. Frequent updates from Detective Makize ensured that the pain of her betrayal remained fresh, making it difficult for her to fully move on. Yet despite the ache, a part of her could not shake an unsettling curiosity about the man who had deceived her so completely. In a quiet moment, Amali confided in her older sister, Zanale, saying, "Sometimes I can't help but wonder, what if I had reacted differently that night? What if I'd shown more compassion? Could I have helped him? Could I have stopped all of this from spiraling out of control?" Zanelli, protective and unwavering, quickly reassured her, "You did what was right, Amali. His issues go far deeper than anything one person could fix. None of this is your responsibility." While Zanel's words brought some comfort, they could not entirely silence the conflict in Amal's heart. Intellectually, she knew her decision had been correct, but the emotional toll lingered. Amal was learning that the human heart rarely aligns neatly with reason. After 15 months of relentless pursuit, Amir finally made a critical error, perhaps sensing the walls closing in on him, or perhaps driven by a desperate need for validation. He reached out to Amale through an encrypted email. The SAP's tech team decrypted the message, revealing a bizarre mix of apology, self-justification, and a faint, almost pleading request for understanding. Amir wrote of his lifelong struggles, the profound feelings of inadequacy that had defined him, and how meeting Amali had given him a fleeting glimpse of what a normal life could have been. "I know I can never undo the harm I've caused," he wrote, his words tinged with a melancholy that seemed genuine, yet manipulative. "But I want you to understand that my feelings for you were genuine. Across all the lies I've spun, you were the one truth I wished I could keep forever." For law enforcement, this message was the long-awaited breakthrough they needed. Acting swiftly, they formulated a strategy to leverage this unexpected communication to their advantage. With Amali's hesitant agreement, a carefully crafted response was prepared. Designed to lure Amir out of hiding, the plan carried significant risk. Amal would agree to meet Amir under the pretense of seeking closure and hearing his side of the story. The meeting was set in Zanzibar, a city where Amir had ties and might feel secure. For Amali, the decision to participate was heart-wrenching. The prospect of seeing Amir again filled her with a mix of dread and determination. While the emotional scars he had left were still raw, she saw this as a chance to confront her lingering fears and unresolved questions. As the day of the meeting approached, an international task force gathered in Zanzibar. Undercover operatives discreetly positioned themselves throughout the city, prepared to act instantly. Amali, equipped with a concealed microphone and shadowed by a team of agents, arrived at the designated meeting place, a quiet, unassuming cafe nestled in the historic Old Town. When Amir finally appeared, his transformation was startling. Gone was the polished, charismatic imam she had once known. Instead, she faced a disheveled figure, his hair unkempt, his beard patchy, his demeanor worn by years of running. Yet his eyes, intense and pleading, remained unchanged, still carrying a faint trace of the charm that had once captivated her. Their conversation unfolded like a fragile chess game, each move laden with emotions and veiled truths. Law enforcement, listening intently in real time, tracked every word. Amir, clinging to fragments of his fabricated persona, sought to explain and justify his actions. He painted himself as a victim of circumstances, someone who had simply lost control of a well-intentioned lie. Amale, summoning her strength, confronted him with the pain he had inflicted not only on her, but on countless others who had placed their trust in him. As she pressed harder, Amir's composure began to fracture. His well-constructed facade gave way to raw vulnerability. "I never meant for it to spiral this far," he confessed, his voice trembling with emotion. "But once I began, I couldn't stop. The respect, the admiration, it was intoxicating. For the first time in my life, I felt like I mattered." His voice cracked as he laid bare the driving force behind his years of deception. For a fleeting moment, he seemed less a cunning manipulator and more a broken man, consumed by his own lies. It was in that moment, with Amir's defenses finally down, that the signal was given. In a synchronized operation, agents converged on the cafe. Amir, realizing too late that he had been set up, tried to bolt but was quickly subdued as he was escorted away in handcuffs. His eyes met Amali's one final time. In that brief exchange, an entire world of pain, regret, and unspoken words seemed to pass between them. Then just like that, he was gone, whisked away in a waiting vehicle, bound to face the full weight of justice. Amir Fakaza's arrest captured headlines around the globe. The subsequent trial, held in a federal court in Cape Town, became a media spectacle, sparking widespread discussion about issues of religious authority, community trust, and the intricate psychology of long-term deception. During the proceedings, more details of Amir's schemes came to light. His ability to exploit the faith and goodwill of communities, his use of charm and manipulation, and the far-reaching financial crimes he committed under the guise of piety. In the end, Amir was found guilty on multiple charges, including fraud, identity theft, and embezzlement. The judge, in delivering a 20-year prison sentence, emphasized the profound betrayal at the heart of Amir's actions, remarking, "You didn't just steal money, you exploited the faith and trust of communities who welcomed you with open arms. That kind of betrayal leaves scars that no sentence can fully heal." For Amali, the trial brought a bittersweet sense of closure. While Amir's conviction marked the end of one chapter, it also forced her to confront the lingering wounds his deceit had left behind. Yet through it all, she found strength in her resilience, her family's unwavering support, and the belief that even in the face of profound betrayal, it was possible to rebuild and move forward. For the Muslim community in Johannesburg and others across South Africa affected by Amir's web of lies, the conclusion of the trial brought a bittersweet sense of closure. While justice had been served, it opened the door to deeper conversations about the foundations of trust, the importance of verification, and the risks of placing blind faith in religious leaders. Mosques and Islamic centers began implementing stricter policies to vet religious leaders and manage financial contributions more transparently. This shift signaled a new era of accountability as community members took a more active role in decision-making, ensuring that their leaders not only inspired, but also earned trust through integrity and openness. For Amala Mthembu, however, the trial's end was more personal. It marked the start of her journey toward healing and rebuilding. Amali's pivotal role in exposing Amir's duplicity turned her into an unlikely figure of admiration within the community. Though she found the attention unsettling, craving a fresh start and a sense of anonymity, she accepted a position at a leading children's hospital in Durban, in this new city far from the whispers and lingering judgment in Johannesburg. Amali channeled her energy into her medical career, immersing herself in the care of young patients. Each life she touched became a testament to her resilience. Yet Amali did not stop there. Drawing from her experience, she began advocating for education on recognizing red flags in relationships and fostering open communication in marriages, especially in communities where tradition often stifled dialogue about such matters. Her story, though deeply painful, became a beacon for others who had faced betrayal, offering both caution and hope. The saga of Amir Fakaza, the enigmatic imposter who had deceived so many, left a lasting imprint on everyone involved. It underscored the complexity of human nature, the seductive power of charisma, and the profound damage caused by years of deceit. For law enforcement, the case illustrated the evolving nature of fraud in the digital age and underscored the critical importance of international cooperation in pursuing sophisticated criminals. For religious communities, it served as a wake-up call about balancing faith with discernment and creating spaces where questioning authority is seen as a strength rather than a challenge to faith. For Amali, it was an unyielding lesson in the value of honesty, the necessity of self-advocacy, and the remarkable resilience of the human spirit. Betrayal had reshaped her life, but it had not defined her. Instead, it became a stepping stone to growth and empowerment. 5 years after that infamous wedding night, on a crisp autumn morning in Durban, Dr. Amale Mthembu stood confidently at a podium, addressing a room of medical professionals and community leaders. The conference theme was one close to her heart: rebuilding trust and fostering resilience in communities shaken by fraud and deception. As her gaze swept across the audience, she saw attentive faces, each person drawn in by her words. "So much has changed since that night," she began, her voice steady yet filled with conviction. "Our experiences shape us, but they do not define us. From betrayal, we can learn to trust again. From deception, we can rediscover honesty. And from our deepest wounds, we can find the strength not only to heal ourselves, but to guide others toward healing." The room erupted in applause as Amale paused, allowing herself a rare moment of reflection. She thought of the winding road that had brought her to this point, the pain, the lessons, the unexpected opportunities. The story of the man who had built his life on lies was once a dark chapter in her life, a shadow that seemed destined to follow her forever. But that chapter no longer defined her narrative. Amali had reclaimed her story, transforming a tale of deceit into one of resilience, advocacy, and hope. As she stepped down from the stage, the applause still ringing in her ears, she felt a sense of peace that had eluded her for so long. Whatever challenges lay ahead, Amali knew she was ready to face them. She had emerged from the ashes of betrayal stronger, wiser, and fearless in her pursuit of truth. Thank you for staying with us until the end of this story. The tale of Amir Fakaza is a stark reminder of how deception and misplaced trust can shake entire communities. It is a powerful lesson about the importance of questioning, verifying, and holding those in positions of power accountable. As we have seen through Amali's journey, resilience and truth have the power to overcome even the darkest betrayals. Her courage in standing up for herself and exposing the lies serves as an inspiration to us all. Remember, trust is a precious gift that should never be exploited. If you found this story meaningful, do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Let us continue to explore stories that inspire, challenge, and remind us of the strength of the human spirit. And as always, stay vigilant, stay informed, and take care of each other until next time.